The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. Chapter 161. Everyone in the room looked at Kiran, wondering what he had up his sleeve. Kiran got up and walked toward the clothes. He chose a set of white garments from all the different types of clothing and handed them to the staff. "Please deliver these to your CEO." Everyone was dumbstruck. The most surprised of them all was the waiter. The fact that Yvonne was the CEO of the hotel was confidential information. The hotel staff dared not mention it to anyone, even if they resigned. How did Kiran know? Snow and the others had no idea who the CEO was. They did not even know if the CEO was male or female. Serena looked at Kiran and teased, "Kiran, how do you know if the CEO is female? Gifting these would be quite awkward if the CEO were a man." Crystal's baby face nodded in agreement, dazzling Kiran's eyes. Even if he were a man, he must have a woman so he could give it away. Kiran gave a faint smile. "How do you know you have the right size?" Serena's curiosity was piqued. "He can just give it to a different woman," Kiran added. "What do you mean?" Serena asked. "He's a man. Having many women is normal," Kiran said matter-of-factly. Serena's eyes lit up. Meanwhile, Snow's face darkened as she pierced Kiran with her eyes and cursed inwardly, "Son of a bitch! How dare he say to my face that it's normal for men to have multiple women? Is he trying to tell me that he wants to find himself other women too? This means war. I'm going to rip his balls off. Heaven forbid she had anything to do with that piece of shit. He might as well just fuck around and die from STD. Serena saw Snow's wavering gaze, and the corners of her lips curved upward. "Kiran, are you building a brothel? I'll join." "Me too," Crystal shouted. "Count me in!" Starley was about to go lean on him. The other women did not want to lose out, so they followed suit. Then Kiran quickly waved his hands. "I'm sorry, but you're too late." "Too late?" Serena and the others asked. "Yes." Kiran looked at Snow before continuing. "My wife wants me in her bed every day. I even have to rely on Viagra pills, so don't even think about it." "Peft." "Ha ha." The other women burst out laughing. Snow glared at Kiran fiercely and was going to stomp away. Just then, Kiran winked at her, implying that if she did not let him in her bed, he would actually build a brothel. In the end, Snow scolded Kiran with her gaze. "Fine, you win." Kiran responded with his eyes, too. "A deal is a deal." The two of them looked deeply into each other's eyes like they were deeply in love. In the meantime, Kiran did not stop what he was doing. He handed over all the clothes to the staff. The staff had to call his colleague to help take the clothes away. Then Kiran asked them to serve the food. After everything that happened, mealtime was much more lively as they constantly said Kiran's name. Kiran became the main topic at the dinner table. Not only because he was rich and handsome, but because he was so masculine. He was tough when he treated millionaire Marshall like nothing. On the contrary, he was gentle with his beloved wife, Snow, treating her like treasure. Who on earth would not want a man like that? However, the thought that crossed Kiran's mind at the sight of those dolled-up women was how privileged and spoiled they were. How would they act in the face of adversity? Out of nowhere, an idea popped into his head. At that moment, Yvonne saw the boxes of clothes in her office and smiled. She picked up a piece of underwear and checked the size. "He could even tell my size. What a keen eye you have, Kiran." The next moment, her face was full of glee. "I give you a company and you gave me a set of clothes. If I give myself to you, will you give me a child in return?" All women loved fantasizing, and she was no exception. Strangely enough, Yvonne felt relaxed at that moment. She was not upset or frustrated about the loss of Peace Pharmaceuticals. On the contrary, she was actually less tense than before. Her life now consisted of just a cup of coffee and a ray of warmth, and that was how it was going to be for the remainder of her life. She even fantasized about Kiran being with her. Chapter 162. For the first time, her sickly face turned rosy, and she looked dainty and beautiful. Kiran and the others did not leave until late at night. Kiran had never truly witnessed a woman's wild side until tonight. They were eating happily, singing at the top of their lungs, and dancing flirtatiously. They were vixens. They were tigresses. That was the only thing Kiran could think of. Although he tried his best to dodge them, they still grabbed his clothes several times. To be precise, he was harassed by these women many times. Kiran was not mad because Snow got to let loose and have a good time. The thought of her crying in her sleep and dreaming about her parents made him feel sorry, so he was willing to do anything for her. When they got downstairs, Kiran walked to the front desk. "Hello, may I have the bill, please?" Snow and the others stood around him and watched. "Sir, your bill has been paid," the receptionist responded politely. Kiran was shocked. Who paid for it? When he asked that question, Yvonne popped into his head. The clothes he gifted just now were all Yvonne's size. Serena said that this room was not open to the public, but after a word from Yvonne, the receptionist let him use it, so he had a hunch. Thus, he used the clothes as a test. Now that the bill had been settled, it seemed like he was right. His question was just a final verification. Ms. Yvonne, the CEO of Peace Pharmaceuticals, paid the bill when she booked the room. All your expenses are on her. Kiran was certain now, so he sneered inwardly. That woman must be emotionally intelligent. Since Ms. Yvonne is so kind, you might as well give me a free membership card. In that case, I'll come and eat here every day from now on. Sir, our manager has given you this platinum very important person card to thank you for the clothes you gifted. The staff immediately handed him a black very important person card. Kiran was stunned. A smile appeared on his face. Did Yvonne want to play honey trap? That sickly girl was indeed gorgeous, but her last name was Quinn, so he could not have anything to do with her. He handed the card to Snow. Honey, the next time the company has guests to entertain, you can bring them to Bayville Hotel. It's all free of charge. Snow was in a daze as she could not comprehend what he just said. Kiran looked at the staff. If I come in person, you can scan my face instead, right? The staff was a little taken aback, but he was reminded of Yvonne's specific orders, so he nodded instantly. Of course, sir. Kiran nodded gladly and shrugged, calmly saying, I'll take over Peace Pharmaceuticals tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Then he turned around and walked out of Bayville Hotel with Snow. Serena and the others followed. After they left, Yvonne walked out of a room on the first floor and looked toward the entrance. Ms. Yvonne! The staff immediately greeted her. Yvonne nodded without a word and went upstairs. Kiran kept talking in riddles. She was confused as to why he did not just expose her when he clearly knew. However, she had already made up her mind to hand over the company to Kiran tomorrow morning. This company would be the tie linking Yvonne and Kiran, entangling them together. She hoped that after this, then, complicated emotions filled her mind. Meanwhile, Kiran and Snow got into the car and went home. Serena and the others drove their own cars, but they followed behind Kiran's. Kiran was a little taken aback by that, so he glanced at Snow. Snow glanced back. Most of them are single women, so they want to stay over at our place and Serena's. What do you mean? Kiran was puzzled. You were the one who did this, Snow said angrily. I did this. Kiran looked wronged. You'll find out later. Snow did not bother explaining. Kiran was filled with questions. Did they actually want to be part of his brothel? Too bad he was not going to have one. When Kiran got home, he noticed all the women swarming into Snow's place. He just wanted to go home, grab a glass of wine, sit back, and relax. In the end, things started heating up again as everyone started drinking. Kiran was speechless. They were all drunkards. Starly was holding a glass of red wine as she sat next to Kiran, and with her foxy face she said sweetly, Kiran, can you help me with something? Chapter 163. Everyone paused in the midst of the chaos and looked at Starly, who was being all flirty. Then, they smiled at Kiran, waiting to see how he would respond. Kiran took off his coat, leaving just his white shirt underneath, and looked at Starly. What's the matter? Starly noticed the solid muscles under his white shirt, and her eyes twinkled. She subconsciously clamped her legs together, and with a flushed face, she said, Kiran, can you please put in a good word for me with Marshall so I can endorse his company? When Crystal heard that, she immediately shouted, You should sleep with Kiran first. Fuck off, bitch, Starly retorted as her legs clamped even tighter. Kiran knew that Starly was asking because of how Marshall was sucking up to him earlier. He did not answer, but he looked at the others instead. What? You all want to make money, right? They all nodded. Of course. How would we survive without money? Tina, who was breastfeeding, made a mournful expression and said, Without money for formula, I can only use breast milk. By the time the kid grows up, I'll be hideous. Peft. Ha ha ha. Everyone laughed at what she said. Kiran could not help but take a deep breath and point at the red wine in her hands. Your baby is going to become an alcoholic. Once again, they burst into laughter. Serena looked at Tina. It seems like you've been caught lying about being poor. Tina casually looked at Kiran. Kiran, if you know a way to get rich, you must think of me first. Let's get rich together. The other girls also huddled over with eyes full of hope and excitement. They were dying to throw themselves into Kiran's arms, hoping that he would throw around some money if they tried hard enough. It was like they were worshipping him. Snow also looked at him curiously, wondering what he was trying to say. On the other hand, Kiran was calm. At the restaurant earlier, he was tempted to run a little test on these women. Now, the opportunity had presented itself. He looked at Starley, who was the first to speak. You don't need to endorse Blooming Group. I can arrange one for you. Do you want to become the #1 brand ambassador in the beauty and skincare industry? Yes. Starley instantly agreed in excitement, as if she had just won the lottery. Me too, Crystal shouted, and so did everyone else. Before that, I'd like to explain briefly who I am. Kiran suddenly changed the topic. Do you want to be our husband? I can get a divorce for you, Tina joked. My name is Kiran York, Kiran said seriously, ignoring Tina's mockery. We know, they shouted. I'm the young master of the York family, the #1 family in Bayville 20 years ago, Kiran said calmly. The #1 family in Bayville? The York family? The women exclaimed, almost dropping the wine glasses in their hands. At that moment, they finally understood where Kiran's arrogance came from. This was the secret. Then they started to become afraid. Everyone in Bayville knew what happened to the York family. Making money with me comes with its risks, so you better think carefully. Kiran's voice became even calmer. The place was pin-drop silent, the fire in those women extinguished as if a pail of cold water had been poured over their heads. They all fell silent and began avoiding eye contact. The atmosphere inside the house felt like it had dropped below freezing. After 3 whole minutes, Tina put down her glass. I've been out for too long. It's probably time to feed my baby. I'll be heading back now. See you again soon. Kiran smiled and nodded. Tina left first because she was afraid of upsetting the 3 major families. One by one, the other women found excuses to leave, including Crystal and Starley. In the end, only Snow and Serena were left. Serena was a little mad. What a bunch of alcoholics. I'll block them all from now on. Chapter 164. Snow did not say a thing, but she looked at Kiran instead. Kiran was composed as he smiled at Serena. Their affairs have nothing to do with us. That's their choice. How shameless of them. You were so nice to them at the restaurant, and you even offered to help them make money, but look what happened. Serena's eyes were filled with fury. They have a freedom of choice, and now they've left. We can be sure that the 3 of us will stick together through thick and thin. Kiran was unaffected. However, Serena was still mad. Snow looked at Kiran. You're mad at Marshall because he did the same thing as they did, right? Kiran nodded. Right. He stood up and looked out the window. I can't face it alone. No matter how much power I have or how certain I am of my decision, what's the point if I have to face everything myself? In Bayville, only the Xander family and a few other people can be trusted right now. Kiran showed a hint of emotion for the first time. Snow looked at his back, and for some reason, her heart ached for him. She wanted to hold him in her arms like a child. When Kiran was out all afternoon, she even got mad at him, thinking that he was screwing around. Only now did she realize that Kiran had hidden away so much pain and suffering. Serena's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at Kiran. Then, we'll take it slow and steady. The Xander family has been able to fight against them for 20 years. Now that they have you, what's there to be afraid of? If we take our time, we'll be able to overcome these problems. Snow nodded, too. You're right. We'll just take our time. However, Kiran shook his head. It's not as simple as you think. What do you mean? They asked simultaneously. Yvonne giving us peace pharmaceuticals may seem like a good thing, but it's actually distracting us. She's trying to get us to expose our weakness. Kiran had only just pieced it together. Snow frowned. I didn't know she was that cunning. Kiran shook his head again. She did that to calm me down and protect the Quinn family, but of course, danger is coming our way. Let me manage Peach Pharmaceuticals. I'll be there so you can rest assured, Serena volunteered. Let Rain do it. Why? the girls asked. If Yvonne wants to kill us with kindness, I'll do the same. With Rain's naivety, problems will surely arise at Peace Pharmaceuticals. That way, Xander Group won't be affected, said Kiran. Serena and Snow were silent and in shock, but they agreed with what he said. Don't worry, any problem can be solved with me here, Kiran reassured them. Kiran, can you solve the problem of us being so unbearably lonely late at night? Serena teased all of a sudden. Kiran was at a loss for words. How could she still make a joke under these circumstances? She's crazy. No, she's insane. Stop with the nonsense, Snow shouted. Fine, I won't delay your anatomy lesson then. Serena laughed and ran out. Kiran saw the darkness behind Serena's eyes. It was her longing for him. He was touched by her genuine intentions toward the Xander family and the York family. At the thought of the wandering souls of the York family and Snow's missing parents, he was suddenly feeling ambitious. You can rest assured that the three families will be destroyed. Serena briefly stopped in her tracks at the door and left. Snow's determined eyes revealed her firm decision to support Kiran. Kiran had his eyes set on Peace Pharmaceuticals tomorrow. Yvonne never imagined that the thing that was supposed to happen in 7 days revolved around Xander Group and the kidnapping of Snow's parents. Now that she had given up Peace Pharmaceuticals, the plan of the three big families was ruined. Chapter 165. At home. Snow showered first. Meanwhile, Kiran brought the rest of the Chanel clothes to Margaret's house next door. Margaret and Rain were both at home, and when they saw Kiran, they were over the moon. Margaret was shocked when she saw the clothes. Kiran, why did you buy so many clothes? Mom, you and Rain can pick out some and just throw away the ones that don't fit. I'll buy more for you next time, Kiran said casually. Kiran, these are all Chanel, Rain exclaimed when she saw the packaging. Is Chanel expensive? Margaret asked Rain. It's very expensive. Rain could feel a stab in her heart when Kiran said to throw them away. She had always seen others wear it, but she had never worn it herself. Kiran, you're so wasteful. You should save some money to marry Rain and have children, Margaret muttered in distress. Mom, Rain shouted, embarrassed at the thought of Kiran and Snow being married. Mother, don't worry about money, I earn a lot. After that, he looked at Rain. Tomorrow, you'll be the CEO of Peace Pharmaceuticals, so these clothes will come in handy. CEO? Rain's eyes widened in shock as she looked at Kiran. Kiran nodded surely. That's right, CEO. I haven't even graduated yet. I don't know anything. How can I be the CEO? Rain said nervously. Then Margaret said in a hurry, What's there to know? Like giving birth, there's nothing to know about. You'll know once you do it, right? She looked at Kiran. Kiran will help you, so there's nothing to worry about. Rain blushed at her mother's hint that she wanted her to have children with Kiran. Kiran was embarrassed too, but he knew that Margaret was sincere. I'm getting old, and having lived all these years, I really wish to see you together. Once I see that the York family has an heir, I can die in peace. Margaret wiped away tears as she spoke. Mom, you need to take good care of your body to take care of your many grandchildren one day. You can't tire yourself out, Kiran teased. What are you talking about, Kiran? Rain stomped her feet embarrassedly and ran into her room with her face all red. In her heart, she was actually hoping to carry his child. Fine. I'll take good care of myself to help you with your kids. Margaret took his words to heart and agreed with a smile. After that, he returned to Snow's place. Snow was done with her shower, and she entered the room and closed the door. The corners of Kiran's lips curled up, but he did not say a word. Instead, he went to take a shower and returned to his room. However, he did not go to sleep. He picked up the secret records of Dragon's Mount and flipped through it. When he got to page 333, he was stunned. Why was it different from what he read yesterday? In fact, there were many typos. Then, he checked the edition and number of the book. It was the one in Yvonne's car, and it was number 27 of the 3rd edition of the secret records of Dragon's Mount. He took out the book he read yesterday and opened page 327. One word was different. The 3rd word of the 3rd line in Yvonne's book was dragon, but in yesterday's book, it was sore. Kiran quickly opened another book, and the word sore was also in that book. It was as if he had just discovered a whole new world. Was the secret hidden in the words? Kiran quickly opened the first book he read yesterday, It was no. 7 of the first edition, and it was the one Margaret gave him. Everything was the same when he read up until page 7, but when he flipped to page 17, he was shocked to find out that the 7th word in the 7th line was the word 9, whereas the other edition and Yvonne's edition had the word sky. Kiran seemed to have found the secret combination. He quickly looked at Mr. Simmons' poisoned book, and according to his calculations, he flipped to page 557. The 7th line had the word steal in it, but the other 2 books had the word smile. Phew. Kiran finally cracked the code. It turned out that the secret was hidden in the words. The secret within the books was barely noticeable unless one read them carefully. One had to read it word by word and memorize it to be able to spot the difference. Otherwise, it would be nearly impossible to detect the single-word difference. Kiran's face was filled with joy. He had found the secret. Considering that there were so many books ending in the number 7, it would take a lot of work to find it one by one. In the end, he suppressed the urge to dig deeper and just let nature take its course. Someone with the books containing the number 7 would look for it anyway, so he might as well just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their work. The thought of that made Kiran feel as if he had just moved a big mountain, so he hopped off the bed and went to Snow's room. Naturally, good news put people in happy moods, and discovering this secret was the happiest thing that could happen to Kiran. His joy multiplied when he remembered their deal. He could sleep with Snow in his arms tonight. Although he was still determined to get divorced sometime in the future, he had to admit that it was nice to sleep with a beautiful woman in his arms. On the other hand, Snow was not actually asleep. She had mixed emotions. Being held by Kiran last night felt good, and it was the first time she slept so soundly in years. However, she was still mad that he would always talk about getting divorced. As the most beautiful woman in Bayville, she did not understand why he would not want her. Moreover, she was feeling uncomfortable right now because she stuck a piece of paper, no, a photo, on her face. Snow decided to count to 100. If Kiran still did not come in, she would just take it off and go to sleep. She slept just fine without him for the past 15 years anyway. Snow counted to 99 and was about to give up. Creak! Her door opened. Snow was frozen, and a smug smile appeared on her face. As she expected, her charm was irresistible. Two-faced jerk! She was going to scare the wits out of that jerk today, so he would not dare take advantage of her ever again. Kiran was fully focused on Snow, so he walked over without thinking much. Just as he got to the bed, Snow turned around and looked up. Kiran thought that she had woken up and was about to tease her. Instead, he shouted and jumped backward. Then, he looked around him and felt his soul left his body. The entire room was filled with pictures of the ugly woman, and anger started to bubble up inside of him. Snow let out a ringing, triumphant laugh. Chapter 166. What do you think of my talisman? Snow took the photo off her face and turned on the bedside lamp. Kiran shut his eyes hard as his mind was in a frenzy. He never imagined that Snow would put up this many photos of the ugly woman who haunted him. Yet, she glorified it as a talisman. Was she trying to ward him off? Kiran was about to collapse from the shock. He swallowed hard and looked at Snow. Good thing I came in here without expectations. I don't think I can perform well anymore after you scared the life out of me. Theft! Snow's face was smug as she said in disdain, What does that have to do with me? It's your future wife's loss, not mine. Snow wanted to aggravate him more, so she said, I can just find myself a real man for a husband. You, Kiran, was furious. Didn't you say you wanted a divorce? I want a divorce now, but you don't. Snow was getting even more smug. Fine, watch out, or I'll make you a widow for the rest of your life, Kiran said angrily and left. Kiran, you have to admit it. I used this talisman to ward off perverts, not you. It's not my fault you walked into my room with that dirty conscience of yours, Snow said. Ward off perverts? Be careful of perverts coming into your room tonight. Let's see what you'll do then, Kiran said angrily and left. Poofed! As if I would be scared, Snow said stubbornly. Kiran ignored her and went back to his room. Snow was delighted as she lay on the bed and giggled. Meanwhile, Kiran's anger dissipated, and he began thinking about the rise of Bayville. He did not take Snow's prank to heart either. Soon, an hour has passed. Snow's excitement disappeared, and she had trouble sleeping. Not to mention, The pictures of the ugly woman on the wall were starting to scare her. She was also scared of what Kiran said, that perverts would come into her room. So, she curled up under the blanket, trying to fall asleep as quickly as possible. However, the fear in her mind was overflowing. Like weeds growing uncontrollably, the feeling was getting stronger and stronger. The more she thought about it, the more afraid she got, and she started to tremble in fear, unable to fall asleep at all. In the end, she pushed her blanket away, sat up, and put her hands into her hair. Her face was pale, and she looked visibly bothered. However, she was still sleepy. So, she hopped off the bed and ran to Kiran's room. Kiran was still lying on his bed, wide awake. He could hear her coming over, so he closed his eyes, pretending to be asleep. When Snow opened the door and peeked inside, it was pitch black. Then she felt a chill down her spine, as if the ugly woman had followed her here. She quickly went into the room and walked to Kiran's bed before whispering, "Kiran?" Kiran suppressed a chuckle while he pretended to sleep. Snow waved her hand in front of his face and thought to herself, "What a pig!" She was afraid of being alone in the room, but she was sleepy. In the end, she took off her slippers and climbed into his bed. Kiran was in awe. He did not know that Snow liked making the first move. If he knew, he would have just asked her to sleep in his bed. Although Kiran had hugged, cuddled, and kissed her before, she was still nervous about getting into bed with him, especially when she was the one making the first move. She lay on the edge of the bed, distancing herself from Kiran. The fear in her mind disappeared, and she was much more at ease. When she finally relaxed and was about to sleep, Kiran, who was supposed to be in a deep sleep, suddenly turned over and pressed his right leg onto her. She was angry, but she covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Kiran was surprised that she could hold herself back from making any sound. He pretended to stretch his arms out and hug her unknowingly. Anxiousness was written all over her face, and she said to herself, "I'm doomed. I've fallen into the wolf's den and got into bed with a pervert. What do I do? What do I do?" Kiran could still resist the temptation, so he tortured Snow on purpose by sliding his hand downward and placing it exactly where it should not be. Snow's entire body went stiff. She was worried about what he was going to do. Just as she was about to collapse from the nervousness, a strange force entered her body. Her whole body relaxed, and she fell asleep. Kiran then slowly opened his eyes and affectionately looked at Snow's delicate face and long eyelashes. "Sweet dreams, silly girl." He soon fell asleep beside Snow. Only after they had gone through years without parental love did they realize how precious it was and how much they were longing for it. The next morning, Kiran woke up early but did not get out of bed. Snow slept so soundly that she forgot she was on Kiran's bed. When she stretched and touched him by accident, she was startled. She almost screamed when she realized she was on his bed. Then she immediately covered her mouth and got off the bed. She ran out of the room and closed the door, patting her chest in relief that he did not notice her. Kiran then got up and walked to the door with a smile on his face. When Snow heard Kiran get up, so she walked out of her room pretending to have just gotten up too. She looked at him coldly as if she never entered his room at all last night. Kiran did not expose her either, and they both pretended not to know a thing. After Kiran dropped off Snow at the company, he drove to Peace Pharmaceuticals. Rain packed her bags when she got up in the morning and took the bus there. She had no choice but to fulfill Kiran's request. However, she was a little embarrassed to get on a crowded bus, wearing tens of thousands worth of Chanel as many eyes were on her. Some people even asked her where she bought the knockoffs because they looked so real, which embarrassed her even more. Once she got to the entrance of Peace Pharmaceuticals, she was stopped by the guard. Just as she was about to say her name, "Isn't that Rain?" Suddenly a bitter voice sounded behind her. Chapter 167. Rain turned around when she heard the familiar voice. As she expected, it was Evelyn. After what happened previously, Rain exited the class group and lost contact with everyone. She was not too surprised to see her here. Peace Pharmaceuticals belonged to the Quinn family, so it was only natural for Evelyn to be here. The corners of Evelyn's lips curled up as she looked Rain up and down in a ridiculing manner. After wearing $10,000 worth of Chanel from head to toe, the pheasant has become a phoenix. Who did you suck up to this time? Rain's expression sank instantly as her anger boiled. You better watch your mouth, Evelyn. Ha! Why are you acting like a saint? Are you afraid to admit what you did? Evelyn pointed at her top. Your top alone costs $8,000. I'm pretty sure that every clothing item you owned in your entire life isn't worth this much, right? Rain was speechless because it was true. She and her mother barely managed to scrape by. Where would they find the money to buy expensive clothes? Just then, the other students came by. Evelyn brought them here because Zenith Corporation had been sold, and they did not have a place to intern anymore. They never expected to meet Rain here. The old Rain used to wear $5 thrift goods, but the new Rain was dressed glamorously in Chanel, so they were filled with envy. The most envious one among them was Nyla. After Shelby became crippled, her postgraduate recommendation was gone. Now that she did not have a man to support her, she was living the poor life again, as if she had swapped lives with Rain, which infuriated her. Every dog has its day. It seems like Rain has found herself a man. Even her clothes are different now. Nyla's tone was full of jealousy. You mean a sugar daddy? Evelyn was more direct. Ha ha. The other students burst out laughing. Rain was trembling in anger because these people seemed to haunt her everywhere she went. Her priority was taking over the company, so she did not bother taking out her anger on them. She walked toward the entrance without a word. Evelyn stepped forward to stop her. What's wrong? Are you too ashamed to admit you found yourself a sugar daddy? Are you afraid of people talking behind your back? Rain had a strong character too, so she glared at Evelyn with wide eyes. What's there to admit? My brother Kiran bought these for me, okay? The other students' expressions changed when they heard Kiran's name. When they recalled what he did, their mouths zipped shut. The scene of Shelby being beaten up was still vivid in their memories. Evelyn was annoyed, so she sneered. Kiran, how sweet! She turned to Nyla and the others. Kiran is the husband of Xander Corporation's CEO, Snow. After Rain became their secretary, she started wearing nice clothes and even called his name sweetly. What do you think is going on between them? Their imaginations ran wild after hearing her words. Ha! I never thought that Rain would be such a gold digger. Did she act all innocent to seduce a rich man? Nyla mocked her with disgust. Innocent? You mean calculative bitch? Evelyn scoffed. Ha ha. The other students laughed out loud to vent their hatred for her. Rain was about to explode. She glared at Evelyn and Nyla and said, Fools will always think themselves to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. That's all I will say. After saying that, she walked away without waiting for a reply. Stop her. Evelyn was mad that she ignored her, so she ordered the security guard. The security guard had already noticed what was going on there earlier, so as soon as Evelyn gave him an order, he stretched his hand out to stop her. Stand right there! Rain did not know why Peace Pharmaceuticals was given to Kiran, but she knew she was to take over the company, so she looked at the security guard. I'm here to take over the company. I'm the new CEO of Peace Pharmaceuticals. Everyone was in disbelief. Theft! The security guard was the first to laugh. He pointed at Rain and laughed obnoxiously for a long time before saying, You? How could those words come out of your mouth when you just got off the bus? Peace Pharmaceuticals is a company worth billions, yet you call yourself the CEO? Who would believe that the CEO takes the bus? She was defeated by the security guard's ridicule. Evelyn walked up to Rain and said angrily, Did you just call yourself the CEO of the company? Rain knew that Kiran would not lie to her, so she nodded. Yes, I'm the CEO of the company. I'm here to... Wham bam! Evelyn slapped her twice and gritted her teeth. You sure are full of it. Ouch. Rain covered her face and cried in pain before glaring at Evelyn. Evelyn pointed to the signboard of Peace Pharmaceuticals. I'm telling you, this is my sister Yvonne's company, and it belongs to the Quinn family. How dare you say you're the CEO? Have you been someone's mistress for so long that you became an idiot? Nyla and the others were shocked to hear that Rain was the CEO, but after Evelyn's explanation, they were certain that Rain was just full of hot air. This was the Quinn family's property, and they were one of the 3 big families. How could Rain be the CEO? Are you out of your mind? Perhaps Kiran brainwashed her. What a dumb mistress. Could the Chanel she's wearing be a knockoff? Her classmates jeered at her. You're out of luck. I'll make sure you're publicly shamed today. Evelyn's eyes were icy cold as she pointed at Rain. Rain ducked in fear. Nyla and the others were also filled with anger, so they were not going to let her go that easily. Several girls swarmed around her and began tearing off Rain's clothes. Rain tried to fight back, but she was beaten several times. Her cheeks were red and swollen, and her mouth was covered in blood. However, the girls did not stop. Rain kept screaming in panic, which only worsened the situation. Some of the male students even took out their phones to take photos and videos. Suddenly, a car engine roared, and the crowd dispersed as a red Ferrari appeared and pierced through the crowd. "You're all dead!" Kiran jumped out of the car and furiously shouted. Chapter 168. Just a moment ago, Evelyn and the others were unrestrained, but they froze on the spot upon hearing Kiran's voice. When Rain heard his voice, it was like hearing the voice of her savior. "Kiran!" she cried and ran over. Kiran hugged Rain and put his coat around her. He looked at her affectionately, but her miserable appearance caused him to flare up. "I'm here. It's okay." Kiran tried to control his anger as he patted Rain's shoulder and said gently, while Rain nodded and cried into his chest. After being momentarily shocked, Evelyn resumed her usual arrogant self. In her opinion, Rain was in the wrong as she claimed to be the CEO, so she had to take action for her false declaration. "Kiran, not only should Rain be beaten up, but I should call the police and have that liar locked up for 10 years. Nyla and the others nodded in agreement. "We were just catching a liar." "Liar?" Kiran asked coldly. "I told them I was the CEO of the company and they started beating me," Rain said aggrievedly. Kiran's lips twitched maliciously. Then he let go of Rain and looked at Evelyn. "You called her a liar for saying she's the CEO of Peace Pharmaceuticals?" Evelyn nodded confidently. "Peace Pharmaceuticals belongs to the Quinn family, yet she claims to be the CEO. Doesn't that make her a liar?" The others nodded. "She's right. What a liar. The CEO is clearly Evelyn's sister." Evelyn was even more smug now as she scoffed at Kiran, implying that the company belonged to her family and that they were crazy to think otherwise. Kiran saw the expression on her face and laughed. "What? Are you scared now that your lie has been exposed?" Evelyn became even more bold. Instead of answering, Kiran said, "You have two choices." "What?" Evelyn asked disgustedly. "First, you kneel and apologize. Then, let Rain hit you back. In your dreams. I'll just report Rain as a liar so you can watch her being dragged away," Evelyn said angrily. "Ha!" Kiran was so mad that he chuckled. "I guess that saves us the trouble." "What do you mean?" Evelyn asked angrily. "What's the second choice?" Nyla could not help but ask. "Yeah, what's the second choice?" Evelyn looked at Kiran and asked. "Go keep Mitchell company," Kiran said, smiling. "Are you going to kill me?" Evelyn nervously took 2 steps back. "Kill you? I don't want to get my hands dirty," Kiran grimaced. Evelyn sighed with relief, but she still stared at Kiran with hatred. "If you don't kill yourself, the Quinn family will kill you themselves," Kiran said nonchalantly. "You..." Evelyn had a feeling that Kiran was not joking. His calm demeanor was scaring her. "Is the Quinn family here? Call that old guy Henry? If he's not here within 30 minutes, he can just start preparing Evelyn's funeral." Kiran looked at the employees of Peace Pharmaceutical. The employees were trembling in disbelief. Who is he? How could he be so arrogant? He even threatened to kill the Quinn family. Evelyn realized that Kiran was not joking. The thought of him killing Mitchell and Barry and ruining Shelby frightened her. You're not actually going to... What do you think?" Kiran raised his eyebrows, implying that he meant what he said. Evelyn tried to control her fear as she straightened her back and said, I'm the daughter of the Quinn family. Was Mitchell not the son of the Quinn family?" Kiran interrupted. Evelyn was terrified now. Kiran took out his phone and said, 5 minutes have passed." Uh-oh. Evelyn hurriedly took out her phone and dialed Yvonne's number. "Yvonne, boo-hoo." "What's wrong, Evelyn?" Yvonne was on her way to Peace Pharmaceuticals as she spoke. Kiran had her sister, Rain, take over Peace Pharmaceuticals, so when she said she was the CEO, I beat her. Now, Kiran wants to kill me. How did our company become his? Evelyn cried. "Don't fight him. I've already given the company to Kiran," Yvonne said nervously. "What? Did you really give it to him?" Evelyn's face went pale. "Yes, I did. Now, apologize quickly. I'll be there in 5 minutes." After Yvonne hung up, she stepped on the gas. Evelyn looked at Kiran in fear. She no longer looked as proud as she was before, and her face was as pale as a piece of paper. Nyla and the others were so scared they began to step backward. I'll kneel down, strip off my clothes, and let rain hit me, Evelyn said to Kiran pitifully. Too late, Kiran outright rejected her. Huh? Evelyn fell to the ground, trembling in fear. She was both confused and terrified. She was fully convinced that Kiran would kill her. Thump! Evelyn was on her knees. When Nyla and the others saw Evelyn kneel, they did the same too. Although no one was asking for mercy, they were desperate for Kiran not to kill them. Rain nervously shot him a warning look in case he was actually going to kill them. Kiran remained silent, waiting for 30 minutes to pass. Screeched! Suddenly a car screeched to a halt, and they heard the sound of running heels. Miss Yvonne, the employees shouted as they stepped aside. Yvonne, who was already sick to begin with, looked even paler. When she squeezed through the crowd, she saw Evelyn and the others kneeling on the ground begging for mercy. She was immediately filled with anger, and she looked at Kiran. Mr. York, they didn't know the company is yours now. The misunderstanding is my fault. Do you want to kneel and apologize too? I don't mind, Kiran pointed at the ground. You. Yvonne did not expect Kiran to say that to her. There was not a hint of color on her face, only rage. If you don't, then prepare to collect the corpse of your sister, Evelyn. Kiran spoke calmly. Kiran, our society is governed by law. Yvonne looked at Kiran as her sickly face reddened in anger. If you didn't have 3 months left, I wouldn't mind sending you off with her, Kiran said coldly. Yvonne froze and looked at Kiran in front of her. It was as if everything that happened at Bayville Hotel yesterday was forgotten. You still have 15 minutes. Is anyone from the Quinn family coming to collect the body? Kiran asked Yvonne. Yvonne, save me! Evelyn screamed in horror. Kiran, the Quinn family is not as easy as you think. Yvonne wanted to protect Evelyn. I don't hit patients. With that, he raised his hand and slapped Evelyn hard. Chapter 169. Ah! Evelyn screamed and fell to the ground, blood oozing from her. Evelyn's face had puffed up like a balloon. Kiran brushed his hands against Yvonne's white down jacket and said ruthlessly, Watch each one of the Quinn family members die while you're still alive. Kiran did not raise his voice, but his murderous tone struck fear into their hearts. I'll die in Evelyn's place. Yvonne looked at Kiran solemnly. Your life is worthless, Kiran refused. Kiran, I gave you Peace Pharmaceuticals. I'll give you as much money as you want. Please let Evelyn go. Yvonne was extremely humiliated. If you kill Evelyn yourself, I can give you as much money as you want. Kiran made her the same offer. Yvonne's delicate body shivered as she looked at Kiran in despair. Did she really have to kill Evelyn? When she saw Rain in his arms, she realized that she should have never messed with him in the first place. Looked at Evelyn on the ground. If you had just kept your hands to yourself, this wouldn't happen. Since you didn't, I'll fulfill your death wish for you. Evelyn's anger turned into fear when she realized Kiran was actually going to kill her. She ignored the pain and got up to beg while trying to step backward. Kiran, I'm only in my early 20s. Don't you think it's too cruel to kill me? Did you not think it was cruel when you aborted the child inside of you? Kiran sneered. Evelyn covered her mouth and looked at everyone in a panic. She could not believe that Kiran knew about her abortion. 5 more minutes. Old man Henry is about to see another one of his grandchildren die before him. How wonderful. Kiran was ecstatic. The smile on his grim reaper-like face sent chills down Evelyn's spine. She took out her phone to call her grandfather. Right then, a car honked, and everyone stepped aside. Henry appeared with 4 men behind him. When Evelyn saw her grandpa, it was like she had seen her savior. She cried loudly and ran to him without even bothering to cover herself up as she hugged him. Grandpa, save me! Kiran is going to kill me! Henry's face was as cold as ice. He came immediately after receiving the news. When he arrived, he saw his granddaughter had been beaten, practically all her clothes stripped off, and her body covered in blood. The sight was too ghastly to behold. He was filled with anger as he looked at Kiran. You've gone too far. How could you? Whoosh! Kiran stilled his body and flew toward Henry like an arrow. Henry was so frightened he bit his tongue. The 4 men around him moved at the same time to stop Kiran. They could not even see Kiran coming, but they just felt a sharp pain in their necks. They immediately held their throats as blood trickled down their hands. Once they looked down, they immediately saw blood gushing out between their fingers. They looked at each other and realized that blood was spurting from their throats. Henry's expression sank. He had brought 4 professionals with him to prevent Kiran from being violent, but they could not stop him. Most importantly, he killed all 4 of them in one swift move. They did not even have the chance to defend themselves. The blood drained from Henry's face. Thump! One moment, Evelyn was hugging Henry, and the next, she was sitting on the ground as she felt her body being hollowed out. Her pleading eyes looked as if she knew that her death was right around the corner. Henry was suppressing his terror as he looked at Kiran. "You're killing people in broad daylight. Badum! Badum!" The bodies of the 4 men started falling to the ground almost theatrically to remind the audience that they had been killed. "Kill? Weren't you going to have them kill me?" Kiran snorted. Henry glowered and wanted to say yes, but he could not say a word. Kiran laughed and shook his head. "I never thought that the great Quinn family was such a coward. I can't believe you're too afraid to admit you want to kill me." Chapter 170. Henry felt like all the stares around him were mocking him, and he burst into anger. "I want to kill you. There you go, that's how the Quinn family should be. At least you're not as cowardly as the Zeiglers." Kiran nodded. Henry was devastated when he heard that. His people had been mercilessly murdered. The only thing he could do was vent his frustration at him. "If you're trying to kill me, killing your people would only be self-defense," Kiran teased. "They didn't even touch you." Henry was about to vomit blood. "So, what you're saying is that they would have to attack me for it to count as self-defense, right?" Kiran retorted. Henry said coldly. Thump! Kiran raised his leg and kicked Evelyn to the ground. "Then I'm helping Rain defend herself." "Ah," Evelyn cried in misery as she rolled on the ground. "Kiran, you're too cruel." Henry was furious, seeing him beat up his granddaughter. "Me? Cruel?" Kiran laughed. Kiran lifted his foot again to step on Evelyn. "I'll die in her place." When Yvonne saw Kiran go mad, she shouted and threw herself on top of Evelyn. Kiran's foot stopped in midair. Yvonne glowered at Kiran with eyes full of rage. "If you kill a woman, what would that make you?" "What's wrong with killing a woman?" Kiran put his foot down and pulled Henry to him. "Why don't you ask him about when he killed the York family? Did he spare the children? Isn't that more cruel? Wham bam!" After bringing that up, Kiran slapped Henry twice across the face. "Tui!" Henry spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He glared angrily at Kiran but dared not speak. Yvonne was also left speechless by Kiran's questions. She had heard that the York family had been wiped out entirely, men, women, and children. In her opinion, her illness was probably God's revenge on the Quinn family. "Yvonne, I don't want to die." Evelyn hugged Yvonne and cried. "Kiran, if you want to kill someone as revenge, just kill me." Yvonne stood in front of Evelyn and told Kiran firmly. Kiran sneered at Henry, who had a twisted look on his face. "You can't call yourself a man." Henry pressed his lips together and said nothing. He had been beaten up by Kiran in front of the employees of Peace Pharmaceuticals today. His reputation was ruined. However, he could not say anything to Kiran. He was worried that he would anger him with his words and get himself killed. Kiran released Henry and looked at Yvonne. "I don't want to dirty my hands on a sick and dying patient." After being called that, Yvonne's body trembled in humiliation. She did not think he would call her that again. Kiran looked at Henry. "Tell the Ziegler and Marsh family to send $5 billion each to Xander Corporations before 6 o'clock. Otherwise, 3 members of each family will die." "Kiran, you're going too far." Henry could not bear it anymore when he heard him say he was going to kill that many people. "Then," Kiran pointed at Henry, Yvonne, and Evelyn, "would you 3 like to die now instead?" Henry was so frightened that he immediately retreated. "I don't want to die." Evelyn shook her head and cried. Yvonne did not want to anger him further, so she held her tongue. Kiran glanced at Nyla and the others. "I won't kill you all today. Thank you for causing the Quinn family trouble." Nyla and the others were so scared that their bodies were drained of energy, and they fell to the ground when they heard they were being spared today. Kiran could kill them if he wanted to, but he could not kill all of them at once because of the law. 4 corpses and an angry Henry were left at the entrance of Peace Pharmaceuticals. "Everyone, get the hell out of here!" Henry roared at them. Nyla and the others scrambled away in fear. Henry hurriedly got into the car and rushed to the Zieglers to discuss killing Kiran.